I am here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, the Senate Intel Committee, Democrats and Republicans have concluded that there is no evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia. Trump sent out this tweet, and I will read it to you. Senator Richard Burr, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, just announced that after almost 2 years, more than 200 interviews, and thousands of documents, they have found no collusion between Trump and Russia. Is anybody really surprised by this? Trump also followed up that tweet thanking MSNBC, who broke the story, and MSNBC, who has been railing against Trump, that making the claims day in, day out, 24/7, that Trump did collude with Russia. MSNBC broke the story, and they had to begrudgingly admit that the Senate Intel Committee, Democrats and Republicans, have conclusively found that there is no collusion between Trump and Russia. It was a fascinating news segment to see MSNBC, the faces of the reporters, as they had to admit this. And Trump, of course, poured a lot of salt in that wound by tweeting out, "Thank you, MSNBC." Alexander, what's going on here?
Well, I think the thing to say, first of all, is that, of course, we've been far ahead of the curve on this one. We've been saying almost on the first go, or almost on the say-so. I mean, even before Donald Trump was elected president, when these first stories of collusion were being circulated, we always said that this whole thing totally lacked substance. And what is extraordinary to me is that it has taken 2 years now for the Senate Intelligence Committee to come to that conclusion. The House Intelligence Committee, which was led by the Republicans at that time, came to that same conclusion a year ago. But the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee, led by Adam Schiff, rejected the conclusion. The important thing is that this time, even the Democrats on the Senate Intelligence Committee are accepting this conclusion, that they are trying to qualify their acceptance of it by making all sorts of rather extraordinary claims, which we will no doubt come to. But the fact is, we now have what is, to my mind, a clear finding that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. There's never been any evidence for it. All the evidence we have seen has either been hearsay or anonymous, or it's never amounted to anything. And the whole thing is just absurd and silly that it was ever conducted for so long, and it has undone enormous damage by the fact that it was conducted for so long. So Donald Trump's endless claims, no collusion, have turned out to be true.
All right. Will the Mueller investigation conclude differently, do you think?
No, I'm absolutely sure that it won't. I think that...
Why do you say that as well?
Right, because, well, first of all, I mean, Mueller can't spin something out of nothing. He can't prove that there was collusion if there wasn't collusion. I mean, he can't do it. The Senate Intelligence Committee couldn't find it. The House Intelligence Committee couldn't find it. Even the Democrats haven't found it. The Senate Democrats have admitted it. The House Democrats, Adam Schiff and co., are still looking for it, but they're never going to find it because it doesn't exist. And Mueller can't find it because, again, it doesn't exist. Coming back to what we've said many times about Mueller's many indictments, not a single one of those indictments actually refers to collusion between Donald Trump, Donald Trump's campaign, or anybody within the Trump organization and the Russians. It just isn't there.
Now that, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons this investigation actually took off is because of Sessions at the AG office. And Sessions recused himself, and he put everything in Rosenstein's hand. And, you know, they just moved this whole investigation forward. Now that you have Barr coming in as the AG, do you see anything changing here? Do you see Barr maybe reeling Mueller a little back in and telling Mueller to wrap up what he's been doing and put an end to this? Do you see Barr actually starting to go through this entire investigation and start to question some of the tactics that were used, i.e. against Carter Page, against Michael Flynn, the unmasking, the FISA warrants? I mean, we can go on and on and on. Do you see some of these dynamics now changing in Trump's favor?
I certainly hope so, and I certainly think that it should happen. Whether Barr will do it remains to be seen. But the first indications are, or at least the early indications are, especially from some of the things he has written and said in the past, are positive. As I said, he has already gone directly against Mueller's reasoning on the obstruction of justice allegation, which the Democrats have always tried to float against Trump, and which Mueller seemed to be prepared to ride with. So I think the overwhelming probability is, when we go back over all of this, that Barr will try to rein Mueller in. And in fact, what we're hearing is that Mueller's investigation is close to an end. So it should be. If there was no collusion, what exactly is Mueller investigating? I've been asking this question for a very long time, almost since Mueller was appointed. Since no evidence of collusion has ever been produced or come up, which is at all convincing, why is he still going on with this thing? The key props of the collusion narrative were the Steele dossier, which is now discredited and which is admitted in October 2017 is unverified. And, of course, the Papadopoulos conversations, which we now know were completely innocuous. So what is left? Why is he still in business? This is the question that I think the American people should be asking.
Alexander, I saw a lot of the Democrats, after this announcement came out from Burr's office and from Burr himself, I saw a lot of the Democrats mobilize, and they went on to all the MSNBC, all the mainstream media channels. They went on to all the newspapers and publications, and they started to try to spin this story, spin this conclusion. Yeah. And you were right in saying they're not disputing the Senate Intel Committee's conclusion. Yeah. But I want to read you how the way that they're trying to spin this now, and I want your thoughts on it, because they were all pretty much saying the same thing verbatim, whether it was on CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, the Washington Post. I mean, they were all reading from the same script. And here's what one Democratic aide said, and I'm going to read it out for you, and I want you to comment on it. Democratic Senate investigators who spoke to NBC News on condition of anonymity did not dispute Burr's characterization, but they said they lacked content. And I quote, "We were never going to find a contract signed in blood saying, 'Hey, Vlad, we're going to collude,'" one Democratic aide said. The series of contacts between Trump associates, his campaign officials, his children, and various Russians suggest a campaign willing to accept help from a foreign adversary, the Democrats say. By many counts, Trump and his associates had more than 100 contacts with Russians before the January 2000 presidential inauguration. What do you make of the way Democrats are trying to spin this, Alexander?
Well, I mean, spin is exactly the right word. I mean, either there was collusion or there was not. It is not a crime to talk to Russians. And that is all that is being alleged here. And again, I think this is an important point to stress. Which Russians? I mean, the fact that George Papadopoulos had some contacts with people in the Valdai group, which led nowhere. The fact that Donald Trump Jr. met with a Russian lawyer who said at one point that she had dirt against Hillary Clinton, but it turned out didn't, and that went nowhere. The fact that Jeff Sessions had a number of meetings, 2 meetings, with the Russian ambassador, which were completely innocuous, and the fact that Michael Flynn spoke on a number of times with the Russian ambassador on the telephone, doing his job. These are perfectly legal and lawful contacts. They do not prove collusion. Merely because some people have spoken to each other does not make a conspiracy, which is what collusion is supposed to be, if we believe some of the things that have been said about it. So I think that this is not just silly and wrong, what the Democrats are saying. I think it is downright mendacious. I think that it is an attempt to make something look sinister and look bad when quite clearly and straightforwardly it isn't. The key point is that there was no collusion between the Donald Trump campaign and the Russians. And to talk about the fact that they weren't able to find a contract in blood between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump is, again, nonsense, given that, as if we're talking about a conspiracy, you don't expect to find such a thing. But you do expect to find some evidence of that conspiracy, and no such evidence has been found.
Does this free up Trump's hand to start dealing with Russia as president of the United States on a foreign policy level? Or do you think that the paranoia and the brainwashing and the hysteria about Russia has been ramped up so much these last 2 years that, for all intents and purposes, this first term of Trump's presidency is a no-go as far as dealing with Russia on a state-to-state level, president to president?
I will have to wait and see. My own personal view is, first of all, he's got to get the Mueller investigation itself out of the way. I think we will see a report from Mueller fairly soon, and I think that report will also clear Trump of any collusion allegation. So at that point, it seems to me that even if his hands are not entirely free, he will be in a much stronger position to start meeting with Vladimir Putin and to have discussions with Vladimir Putin of a sort that he has not been able to have up to now. Whether that will lead to any big substantive steps being taken, I'm afraid I am more doubtful, because the effect of this Russiagate hysteria is not just that it has poisoned minds in the United States against dealings with Russia, but because it has forced Donald Trump to fill the administration with people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo and lots of others who do not want good relations with Russia. And for Donald Trump to be able to change that entirely will mean going against the very people he has now appointed. So I think that may be very difficult to do. And realistically, I don't think any very big change is going to happen this side of the election.
All right, at least not in this first term. Maybe in the second term, he maybe has some more leeway to do something.
Yes. And I'd like to say something about that, because it seems to me that one effect of all of this is that it has strengthened Trump's position in the election. I mean, it's going to be, given that the big dominant narrative against him, especially in the first year, but also to a great extent in the second. I mean, one remembers this awful stories that were spread around the Helsinki summit, was that he was somehow in Putin's pocket. If he's not seen to be that anymore, then I can't help but think that that will help him with a lot of American voters. I'm going to make one point about that, which is, I think, one that is seriously overlooked. I have always myself believed that Donald Trump lost more votes during the presidential election of 2016 because of the claims that he was connected to the Russians than Hillary Clinton lost votes because of the leaking of the Podesta and DNC emails. And so people who point out correctly that Donald Trump lost the popular vote need to bear in mind that if that allegation of involvement or being in the pocket of the Russians had not existed, the very strong likelihood is that Donald Trump's popular vote would have been higher, in which case his victory would have been bigger. And that may be an important fact come the election in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton concocted the whole thing, and it worked. It worked.
Well, it did, absolutely. It worked.
Yeah.
I mean, it did work. I mean, it took votes away from Trump during the election. Not enough, but, certainly enough to do damage.
It worked.
It paralyzed the administration, right, the Trump administration, and came very, very close to delegitimizing it. Dangerously close, I might say.
Yeah, the strategy, Hillary Clinton's strategy was actually spot on by spinning this ridiculous story of Trump-Russia collusion. The only problem for Hillary Clinton was Hillary Clinton. She was just too damn lazy to get her ass out of her mansion in Connecticut or LA or wherever the hell she was and go to the heartland of America That was the
Exactly.
problem. Other than that,
Well,
her
it's-
Trump-Russia collusion hoax really did gain traction.
Absolutely. And if you read the US media and you follow social media in the US, you can see how it has. It's dominated the narrative since well before the voting in that election took place. And you're absolutely right to stress that the major reason why Hillary Clinton lost the election was because she was a terrible candidate, deeply disliked by the American people.
Yep. Very well put. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below. Click on that subscribe button and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt to help support the Duran. And you will also find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages in the description box down below. Follow us on iTunes and Soundcloud to get this video in audio format. And you can go to theduran.com and see all the articles that Alexander is looking up to every day. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.